Well, hello out there to my ninja circle. How is everyone doing? Welcome to episode 10 of Dojo Talk. My name is Paula Bell, also known as the BA Martial Artist. And the purpose of Dojo Talk is to provide a training ground, the dojo, for business analysts to hear from experts and thought leaders in the industry. And today I am joined by my special friend, my queen, my I don't know what else to call her. She and I have just been through so much together, but my girl, Andrea Wilson. Andrea is a certified IT business analyst, experienced in gathering requirements, developing process models, quality assurance testing, and process improvement with a commitment to optimizing organizational success. She's driven and proficient with identifying risk and skillful in developing efficient and effective business solutions. She aims to create desirable user experiences while addressing business needs, yielding recurring customer return, and maximizing organizational success. You can go ahead and catch Andrea Wilson on LinkedIn, but we'll have more of that conversation later on in the video cast. But at this time, please join me in welcoming Andrea Wilson to the stage. All right, you know how to do that again because I messed up the whole thing. Put up the wrong slide, put up the wrong thing. How you doing, my friend? How are you doing?
Hello there. Doing well. How are you doing?
I am doing great for a Monday. Happy Monday.
Happy
Happy
Monday
Monday.
to you. It's been
Looking
exciting. We're
beautiful.
on the back end, right?
Yes. On the back end of the Monday. And, I forgot today was a holiday too, because I've just been in my zone. But enough about me and all of this. Let's talk about you and what everybody came on here to talk about, which is how on earth you transition from a business analyst to a manager, if that's something you're interested in doing. So can you kick it off by just sharing your personal journey of transitioning from a business analyst role to where you are today?
Oh, wow. It just kind of happened, quite honestly. I think once you live in your role and you get excited about what you're doing, you become motivated, you become driven, and then opportunities just happen for you, right? So when you believe in what you're doing and you execute and execute and execute, you make it that way, right? So I was working along, doing my happy little stuff, building relationships as a BA does, looking at the forest and down in the trees and back out at the forest, and working with my stakeholders and just producing, right? Managing the timelines and making sure we were doing what we were supposed to do. And then you become that person that people want to be on the project, and you're there. And then you get called on even more, and you get called on even more. And then it happens. You spend a lot more time with people. You start mentoring other people. They want to be there in your circle, right? And as you have going here, your circle comes, they show up and they lift you up, and then it happens. So it's not, I don't think, anything I did except staying true to me, and the people around you lift you up, and then it's your turn.
But there's something you said that's really, really critical, I believe, is what you did is you performed in your role. You just did what the role was. You performed in
Mm-hmm.
that role. You demonstrated your value in that role, and that got noticed. And through that being noticed, you probably had opportunities where people might have believed more in you than you believed in yourself, maybe.
Oh boy, let me tell you, you go through a lot of imposter syndrome along the way, right? So you have to tell yourself, and not just then, I still do regularly, like, okay, a friend of mine tells me all the time, you are calm and you are in control. Whenever I start feeling that imposter come, but you have to be true to yourself. You have to believe in yourself. You have to talk yourself up. You have to believe what you're telling people. Oftentimes they know what it is that you need. They know the information that they need to be providing to you, and you encourage them. You have to be encouraging to yourself as well. And I think that's just what happens.
So, what have you found now that you're more in a manager role? Actually, tell everybody, what do you do now? Let's start there because you were a business analyst. So let's step back for a minute. What do you do now?
I was talking to somebody about this today. I was asking, okay, what do you want to do? Are you interested in doing BA? Are you interested in doing PM? What are you looking for? And it was I'm a BA, and so I should be doing PM work. And I said, well, you do realize they are different disciplines. They are very closely related and they work hand in hand as you and I are doing, but they are different disciplines and they require a focus that's a bit different, especially when you're doing your foundational work. So I spent several years as a business analyst and I enjoyed every minute of it. I also, during that time, once I got comfortable in what I was doing, spread my wings a bit because you want to learn those, I call them sister roles, right? The things that interlock so that you can have those meaningful conversations with those people that hold those roles, right? So I started spending time with project managers and building that relationship, that sister relationship, and then you start doing some of the work, right? So I did that, and I did that for a while. Worked on the certification, and just kind of kept growing, and that's a big part of it too, right? That making that transition is about being a learner.
Mm,
You are teaching people to learn. You want them to learn, and you are learning yourself. You can't stop doing that. And I kept doing that. And so that set me up in a place where I had the knowledge in both places, and then it paid off.
beautiful, beautiful. And I remember the day. So, for those who may not know, Andrea and I are, if I didn't make it clear at the very beginning of the introduction, we are friends. We've been friends for quite some time now. And we both are each other's accountability. There, I had imposter syndrome, and Andrea would call me out and be like, okay, now you know you shouldn't have said that, right? So, I've watched you grow. I've watched the metamorphosis. And I remember the day you called me and you told me you had gotten this new role that you were
Right.
in. And I was just so excited for you because I saw that happening for you probably a year ago. There was no reason why you shouldn't have been in that role a year ago. And it was just amazing to see how you have grown in the things that you've done. With that, though, what do you think are some of the key differences, some of the challenges for a transition from a business analyst into a manager, more of a manager role? I'm
Ah,
more interested, not so much the skills are great, and I want you to talk about that too. But let's start with some of the challenges first. What have been some of the things that have been a little bit different as you making the shift?
you know what? It's funny, right? Because you still, since they're so closely related, you want to live in your BA world. And I find myself having to pull myself out of that sometimes. I want to jump right back into the requirements and even in the kickoff, sometimes I'm going in the direction that's less about the project and more about, hey, let's dig the weeds, right? So that's been a challenge for me. But I did find that the skill set, though, the same skills can be applied to leading my team and
Mm,
to leading a project in the sense that you have to start with a plan, right? You do some discovery and you got to figure out what your plan is going to be. So I have to back myself up and go, okay, wait a minute. Let me think of this in terms of not down in these weeds, but the overarching goal. And I can still make myself a plan. I can still make myself a schedule, right? I still need to do those things. So you have these skills, I hope that I am conveying that are transferable. BAs have skills that just they go across anything and effectively into project management. But my biggest challenge is taking off the BA hat sometimes. It's great though. With my team, we get to work together, and so I get to dig in a little bit and kind of talk about that and mentor folks, and which is also something you do as a BA, right? So again, yet transferable. That's when I have to remind myself I can go and do those things, and it's still like I'm doing my BA, right? I think that was my biggest challenge.
So I definitely want you to bring that up because as a coach, as a BA coach, when I coach others who not only do I coach on skills, but I also coach on career development on where you can
Mhm.
go. Because though I've done business analysis work for over 2 decades, I have never had the formal title of business analyst. You will not ever see it on my resume that I've ever been called a BA, right? But I did transition from that BA work, which I love to be in the detail too, to now I got to manage a group of BAs or a group of process consultants. I don't
Mhm.
actually get to do the work anymore. I'm the one who's driving the strategy, driving the objectives, making sure they understand what we're working on and why we're working on that. Have you found as you've been transitioning in this role that you like it or you don't like it or you miss it? Now, look, let me caveat this. Anybody who's watching this who's from Andrea's company, okay, I'm putting Andrea on the spot right now. All right. I'm just asking the question. I'm quite sure she's not going to say that she can't stand it, but are you finding that it's hard to is hard, or are you finding that now you're getting a little bit it's getting a little bit easier as you go day by day by day on changing that mindset?
I would say, I wouldn't say six and one half, six and a dozen in the other, right? I'd say,
All
let
right.
me make sure I get that right. It's not six and a half dozen in the other. Because every now and then I want that occasional use case. I
I
just,
understand.
you want to get in there and you want to do that. The way I have to shift my mindset and say, okay, well, I can think of processes that we need to look at our strategy, and I can focus on building process there and work with the team to do it. So I get that experience. It's not down in the details, but I do need to get to the details of where are we going? What are we doing? So I still get to use a lot of those same skills just in a different way. And once I get that in my head, okay, it's like, okay, let's go forward. And you have this, you want to be creative, so that happens for you too. And then you just start working and the juices start flowing, and it. It's, you look up and it's the end of the day, right? So you might have to start this whole thing over again tomorrow. And I'm assuming that at some point that may slow down a bit, but I still find myself in the morning, that's where my head is. And then trying to back off and focus on that. How can I use these same skills and use my happy about using those skills to produce what I need to produce so that we can work together as a team and get where we're trying to go as a team.
I love it. I love it. Before I get to the next question, which is going to be a little bit of a transition into leadership and
Mhm.
development, we do have a question from the audience. And so we have a question from Lalita. And the question is, from business analyst role, would it be better, easier, more logical to move to product management or project management? What do you think, Andrea?
Wow. I think it depends on the individual, quite honestly. I
Mm-hmm.
started out my BA life thinking I needed to have project management first. And it was that my lack of knowledge about the two different things, right? I hadn't even really worked in agile or scrum or anything. I just lumped it all together in my head. And it wasn't until I started tearing into the piece and started trying to learn that I realized, okay, a lot of these are similar. Where am I going to focus? And that really was on the role that I was in. So you'll see 1,000 names for BAs, and they won't all be doing the same thing, right? Some of them will really be in quality assurance and doing some testing and things like that. Some others will be hard deep down in the requirements, and a large part of their world is there. Some of them will be helping the project manager and doing some planning, and then maybe planning on a larger scale. So it really depends on you and what you're doing as the logical role. So if your skill set for your position, and when I say your position, make sure that what you're doing in your position matches where you're trying to go. If it's not, then maybe you need to be in a different place. If that's not the skill set that you want to hone, maybe look at something different. But look at the roles and see what works together and start your progression there. That's what works for me. That's the way I mentor with my team. What works for your position? What are you doing now? Now let's look at this other role that you're interested in going to. That might be the easier transition because you're already doing some of those things. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. And I do agree. It really does depend on the person. It also depends on the environment you're working in, right? Because
Oh,
every
yes.
environment isn't the same. So it really does depend on the environment in which you're working with to determine, is that even the role that I want to be in based on what's going on in the environment. The thing with business analysis that I love about it is, you said it earlier, transferable skills.
Mm-hmm.
The sky's the limit with the skills you have as a BA. I use BA skills every single day in
Mm-hmm.
everything I do. And so these skills that you have are transferable. You just have to know how to market them.
You got to
You
know
just
how to
have to know
market
how to
them.
talk about them, right?
And you've
And
got to
as
know who you are and where you are, right? You see
right,
people that fail at a job and you think, man, they must have been terrible at it. Maybe they were not in the right environment to succeed,
correct.
right? So know who you are, know where you want to go. Sometimes, and I've been here, I say, okay, this role is for me and this role is for me. And I'm taking this square peg and trying to stick it into a round hole instead of stopping back saying, okay, what is it I want to do? What is it I like to do? Where am I trying to go? Then you'll
Mm-hmm.
find your pieces.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that's a great segue into the next piece. As you talked about transitioning from being a BA to now having more of an oversight,
Hmm.
and you're not in the details as much as you would like, but you are responsible for other people, right?
Hmm.
You're responsible for their career development, you're responsible to lead them. How do you approach team leadership and development in your new role, drawing from your experience as a business analyst?
It's awesome, right? So, one of the things that you hear all the time about BA work is building relationships. This is no different, right? You got to get to know the people. If you want those people to want to work with you, you've got to get to know them. You've got to have some empathy. They have to know that you understand, that you care enough to understand what's going on. It's the same thing with your team.
Mm-hmm.
People are people and they're still people, whether they're at work or not. So life will happen whether they're at work or not. And you have to be ready to deal with that along with them. um, Folks want structure. They do, even from little kids all the way up to adults. And if they know that you care enough about helping them to build that structure, they usually will work with you in that. And then helping them to find that work life balance. Remember, I said they're people, having empathy and what they've got going on in their world and growing with them. I'm not going to push out this training and then say, okay, you've got to be doing this in order to grow and not have my own training plan, my where I'm trying to go. So for leadership with me, it's okay, let's do this thing together. And folks, they have, I think, more respect for somebody who realizes, hey, we can be peers about this and we can work together and move the football together as a team.
So you said another key point that I want to impress upon individuals who are desiring to lead teams or be in a managerial role: practice what you preach. You cannot expect the team to do something that you yourself is not doing.
And they
And
will
that is
find it.
critical. And they will, that will hurt your credibility, it will hurt trust. And
Mhm.
we all know that once you lose trust, it's really hard to gain it back, right?
It's hard to
So
get back.
you have to definitely practice what you preach. Role model the things that you want the team to do.
Mhm.
And if there is a situation where there is something that you may not have the ability or capability to do, own it, acknowledge it,
Speak
and
it, right?
communicate it.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Right.
But you know what? I understand why you wanna know. Let's go find this answer together. Here's some tools that
Exactly.
I have for finding those answers. We can work together. If you wanna go off and do it on your own, that works too. Come back to me if you have some trouble, and we will work this thing out together because we need this answer. But yeah, do not hesitate, as you would as a BA with your stakeholders. I don't know is okay.
As long as you follow that up with, I don't know, but I will find out,
I will find
right?
out.
I will
Mhm,
I will get you an answer, because I
mhm.
do think when individuals first go into a leadership role, and I have been guilty of this myself, when I started as a formal manager role, and I was now invited to all of these executive meetings and leadership meetings, I felt that I always had to have the answer. I can't walk into this meeting not knowing. That's such an unrealistic expectation to put on yourself, because you don't know what's even going to be asked in the meeting. So you don't know what's going to come, and it's okay. And my manager at the time said to me, you are aware that we don't expect you to know all the answers to every question when you come in these meetings, right? And I mean, that was like a light bulb to me. I was like, really? Because I really thought I was supposed to come in here knowing everything, but you really don't. It's okay to
And
not
it's
know.
okay, right? It's crazy because I want to say and the next role I had under this one, um, yeah, you do that. You put on your cape because you think you've got to protect everybody and you got to protect yourself too. And you're excited about, climbing the ladder and you want to know things, right? You have to humble yourself sometimes and say, I just don't know. I'll get you an answer, and it's okay because you'll find that there are other people in the room in higher positions that say the same thing. I don't know.
Hmm.
And you've been there where somebody's talking, you're like, they're saying a whole bunch of nothing. It's easy to see when they have no clue, right?
Hmm.
So just be willing to say, I don't know. And it's fine. What you're showing is that you're willing to do the work and people are okay with it. And the same thing happens with your team. There's a lot of things they don't know. There'll be a lot of things that you don't know, but you can grow together. And that's another opportunity. That's another strategy for building morale that you can have a lot of wins with.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. So let's go a little bit deeper. How do you balance your technical expertise as a business analyst with the broader strategic and leadership responsibilities of a managerial role? How do you balance that?
Oh, wow. Um, you know, I would say that a lot of it is still a bit transferable. I don't get where I want to be. The trying to have the balance is in the growth, right? So you have to keep your skills sharp. If you have a certification, right, and you want to maintain that, something like your CBAP in any of these organizations that you belong to, you have to have that continuing education, right? So you've got to keep your skills sharp. You are doing some regular planning so that you plan in your study time, your learning time. And I think that's critical. Your leadership is going to be there and it will try to usurp everything you've got going on. But again, as a BA in any role, you have got to plan it in. Do not overextend yourself, work the priorities, and it will be okay. It'll be okay.
So you said something there with don't overextend yourself. I remember when you had mentioned to me that you, again, when I got that call from you that you got in the position. One thing I said to you was this. I said, get ready for the first 6 months to be extremely busy for you, because you're going into this new role and whatnot. So I've got to do a pulse check. Was I right in the advice that I gave you, as far as you're probably working a lot more than you had before you went into the role as you are transitioning in this role?
Let's be clear. And anytime, no, you were more than right. So, and I want to be very clear to people that you will, and folks will tell you, no, don't do any more than your X number of hours, whatever you, no, you're going to do it. That first 6 months, you will be drinking from the fire hose. You've got to slow down, take some deep breaths. As my friend said, you're calm and you're in control. Get
Mm-hmm.
your priorities in line and
Mm-hmm.
work them. You will work some extra because you're taking in new knowledge. You're not learning just new skills, you're learning new information, right? But you're going to become that person. You're going to become that go to person again. Remember when you did it the first time in the last role and the role before that, you will become the go to person. You just have to remind yourself that it'll come. But yeah, it's like drinking from a fire hose for a while, and you have to put in the extra time. But there it is, right? That's how you got where you're going, and that's how you'll keep moving forward, because you do put in that sacrifice.
And I will also say this to individuals who are, again, looking to transition into a manager role or oversee a team. Don't let that additional time and work be a negative perception to you. Just like Andrea said, it's something new. You're putting in the time. And typically, when you really care about something, you want to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to make sure that you understand, you want to set yourself up for success. It does get easier. It does get smoother. It does ebb and flow. But give yourself some grace during that ramp up, because that's what you're doing. You're ramping up. Give yourself some grace as you ramp up to take on this new role that, number one, you are probably not going to be looked at as that go-to person from the role you just came from, because
Right.
you're not there yet. That doesn't mean you're less significant or less relevant. It just means that you're in a new role now. So if you were getting high performance reviews in this other role where you were over exceeding, you might actually just get sort of like a you're doing your job performance review the first year. That should
Mm-hmm.
not be a hit on your ability to do the work. Remember, you're in a new role. You're learning things, and you will build up to that, because sometimes I've seen where people are like, well, I've always been a exceptional individual contributor.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. You're probably going to meet expectations when you get into that manager role, because, again, it's something new. And so get your mindset ready for that if it's something that you want to do, because you may not go in blazing. Another thing that I've seen, and I'm interested to hear your perspective on this, Andrea, because you could be a consultant and do this, is you now take on a role. There could be a potential now that your peers are now your direct reports. So there's a dynamic shift
Right.
there, right? Your peers could be your direct reports, or that I just lost what the other thing is that I was going to say. Just that quick. Just that quick. Let's just talk about dynamics for a minute. I guarantee you it'll come back. But let's talk about dynamics for a minute. Are you in the position where your peers are now reporting to you, or no?
I am. And this has happened before. And
Okay.
sometimes it can be definitely a bumpy ride. So when I go slide back just a little bit to what you said, that when you jump in the role and you're in it, even at 6 months or whatever, in your whole first year, you might just hit satisfactory. Don't be offended by satisfactory. That means you have satisfactorily done what you need to do. You were not in the I am flying around like Superwoman mode, because you were doing what you needed to do the job, and you're still there, right? It was not that it was unsatisfactory. It was that, okay, you did what you needed to do, and you'll get your time to soar. And that's the change. And when you come into a new organization, it just happens that way. So, and then you may have been in the situation where Paula was going with this, where you have your peers now as your employees. They're your team people. They're the people that report to you. So that's happened to me at a few organizations, and it's not always the best ride. Sometimes you'll have people that will support you 100%, and they want to prop you up and be there and help you because they know you're drinking from their fire hose. Sometimes you'll have people that will jockey for position because they think, okay, well, if you did it, then I can do it too. They might be the people that you've mentored along the way, and they think, okay, you were right, so let me go try to get mine too. Sometimes it's going to be folks that just didn't want you to have it because they wanted it. So, and that happens sometimes too. Um, Keep looking forward, try not to take it personal, and just use your skills to continue to build relationships that will be successful for what you need to get done. And take off that Wonder Woman cape, because you're not going to be that in every role, and you can't be that in every situation. Just be true to what you're doing.
100% agree. And I now remember what I was going to say. I actually wrote it down this time so I didn't forget. This is where I was initially going, and I took the peer route. But also, one mistake that I've seen individuals make, and again, not even in a manager role, it could be a consultant, is going into a department or new role or organization that's new and criticizing everything that's being done in the organization and trying to automatically just change things because of the expertise they had from another role. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Let's go back to what Andrea said earlier, which is build relationships first.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you were the expert back then in the role that you were in. That's why you were sought after, because you had that knowledge. Be a little bit humble going into this one and not trying to overextend that expertise, because at the end of the day, one of the most important things a leader has to do is build trust. If your team does not trust you, you are not going to be as effective of a leader than you could be. So, Andrea, I want to see, do you agree or disagree with those statements based on what you are now going through as you transition?
You know, Paula, you're my girl. And you know this. We've talked about this and changes. And it doesn't even matter if it's in the same organization, in different organizations, there will be a culture that's there, that lives there. And it would be to your advantage to get to know that culture very early. You can be the most productive person and the most well liked from wherever you've come from. But if you come in with a steamroller, trying to change everything immediately without getting to know the people, the way of work, who they are as collectively as a group, you may be creating more problems for yourself, and building barriers where you should be breaking walls down, right? So I wholeheartedly agree that you come in and take the temperature, right? You get to know things. That's as a BA, you know that. You come in and you get oriented. You start to get to know the people, you get to know the culture. What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? What is your role? You might get a title. It might be BA, it might not be BA. You might be expected to do traditional BA work. You might be expected to do some, you know, one of the different ends, right? Polar opposite ends of the role, right? But you need to get to know that first. If you come in and you just dive in and you're doing QA and testing, and where they need you is at planning, you're in the wrong place. And you may get a loss of respect for that. So come in and listen and get to know the culture and build relationships. Spend some time at the water cooler, wherever that is, whether that's on Teams or there's an actual water cooler, and get to know the people, get to know what they care about. That's how you're going to find out their needs, whether it's your employees or your peers. That's how you're going to find out what needs to be done and where you are needed.
100% agree. 100% agree. And just want to recap just really quick some of the things that Andrea said that's really important, especially if you have joined a little bit late and you're just now tapping in. But uh, Andrea says, you know, when you're doing this transition from a business analyst role to a managerial role, make sure you believe in yourself. You know, we do have that imposter syndrome that creeps up, but just make sure that you believe in yourself. Continue to learn. That's really, really important. Just because you have gotten to a manager role, that doesn't mean you've arrived. That means you have new skills
Right.
to learn. Now
Mm-hmm.
you have other skills that you have to focus on. And it may not necessarily just be business analysis perspective from a business analysis perspective, but also from a leadership perspective. You have to get out of the details. And I do believe this is one of the hardest areas you have to get, because at this point you have to be overseeing, so getting out of those details. So if you find that you just can't get out of the details, manager role may not be the best role for you, because most people don't like to be micromanaged.
Right.
So right, so they are not going to want that. Building relationships, so you start to build that trust. I love understanding the culture. You have to take time to understand that, understand the culture, understand the team strengths, areas of opportunities where you're going to use them. Practice what you preach. You have to balance everything, but the balancing is growth. Be prepared to work hard in those first 6 months. It's okay.
Oh, wow.
Be
Yes.
prepared. Be very much prepared. Don't overextend yourself, but put in the time, put in the work, just like you put in the work before. And also make sure that in everything that you do, if there's one piece of advice that I would give, and in all things that you do, make sure your integrity stays intact. Make sure you are still leading with integrity, leading with the empathy. Your morals and values are staying intact, because I have found in manager roles, you will be tried and true. And sometimes you have to go to war for your team, and that can take a toll on you. I don't know, have you had to experience where yet, and not even in this role, but just in your career, because I know you've held many different positions, where you've had to go to the combat for your team, and what strategies or tools did you use to do that, if you've had that experience?
You know, that's a good one because as a leader, you don't have to be a manager, right? You might be sitting with your peers and they may have elected you to be their leader, right? You become the voice of the group. And there are times when you will go to war if you believe in and you understand exactly what these people are in need of. And it's difficult because you have to put on, I call it your big girl pants, and go in and have those difficult conversations. So um, don't be afraid of the difficult conversations. They might be extremely uncomfortable. They might be extremely uncomfortable, but you'll sleep better if you have them. You will sleep better. You will rest better, and you are being true to yourself by going that way. And anybody that's in a leadership role, like I said, whether manager or not, that's just something you do. It's naturally what you're inclined to. Um, and then the other part of that is you may find yourself in a position where you sometimes have to go to war with your team, right? You need to stand your ground because you don't want to put yourself in a position where trying to be the friend of the team will
Mm.
make you question your morals or your integrity. And you don't want to create that morale issue between your team members either. So be true, be firm, get to know the issue, and make decisions based on the best interest of the organization and the people that are involved.
So if you had to give one piece of advice to a business analyst right now
Mhm.
that's aspiring to be a manager or to lead people, what piece of advice would you give them?
Oh, gosh, I got like 30 pieces. Um,
All right. What
the
advice would you give them?
what advice would I give them? No, the big thing is to keep doing what you're doing. Um, do it with fidelity, execute with fidelity.
Mm.
Um, give the details the way they need to be. So take the time to learn what it is that you need to learn, and then execute with fidelity. And when you do that, people will come to you because they can then believe in what you're doing and they see you walking that walk. And inevitably, they're going to want you to mentor them, right? So now you've got a group of people that can speak on your behalf. You don't have to ask them to, they will. And you become that go to person. And the more projects you get involved in where you are that person, those people will request you. They will want you to be out front. So be ready. Don't be frightened. You can be frightened. You just have to be ready to ask, to act, because growth happens in those uncomfortable moments. So keep executing with fidelity, uh, be aware of where you're going, grab the skills along the way, and demonstrate them repeatedly.
That's great advice. So, and I 100% agree with everything you just said and all the gems that you've given us today. I'm going to flip this. So, I've been in management for many a years, and I've had to manage. What question would you ask someone like me as a manager who is now going into this transition? And I hope I can answer
I
it.
love that. What would you have done differently along your way? So you've been in so many roles and you've done so many things, and you continue to be just Paula. And so I know there are times where you felt knocked down, knocked over, run over, not respected for the position you were in. What would you do different along the way? Would you want to have it have been moved along, expedited, or do you value each of the experiences?
I value each of the experiences because each of the experiences has made me stronger. But if I had to say what I wish I would have done earlier in my career that I did later in my career, I wish I was bolder. I wish I had the confidence to speak out when I knew something wasn't going the right way, or if something wasn't right, or if I just didn't agree with something. I sometimes wouldn't speak. I would stay quiet, and
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't advocate for myself, let alone my team. So I wouldn't advocate. As I got later on in my career, I was able to do that. I'm gonna tell you, when I turned 40, it hit different. Life hit different. And I think when I turned 40, that boldness came out because I'm like, what on earth do I have to lose at this point? Right. I think I was being a little bit more careful because I was trying to build my career and trying to climb that thing they call the corporate ladder, which I don't even know if that really exists, but trying to keep climbing, climbing, climbing. And I feel there were some points where my voice was lost. I didn't speak up. And I wish I had. I wish I would have had that boldness and that confidence before. So I would say to people, it's very hard to argue data. So don't argue off of emotion. Don't debate off of emotion. If somebody comes at you sideways or reckless, get the data to back up where you want the organization to go, or what you believe in, because that was the thing for me that gave me the confidence, was that data. Because you're not going to argue the data with me. So, okay, this is what you're saying, but this is data. I remember having a really hard conversation. This is when I knew that I had really arisen. It was a few years ago. No, actually, it's not even a few years ago. It was a couple years ago. I was in a situation with my manager where she didn't like the fact that I didn't make this hiring decision that she felt I should have made. And I wasn't the hiring manager. I was just one of the interviewers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very interesting situation because I was interviewing. I had moved into a different role, and the two people who were the finalists were my past direct reports.
Uh,
So, that's, to me, I really wanted to be on a panel or something because I didn't want
mm-hmm.
bias to weigh in and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up interviewing them, and both of them I recommended to move forward. I'm not the one hiring them. I'm recommending both of them to move forward. They did very well in the interviews. And she wanted me to make a decision. I'm like, I can't. I'm not, I'm not really the person they would be reporting to anymore. And this is, the feedback I gave. So I thought it was over. I thought the conversation was over. A couple of days later, I had my one-to-one, and it comes up again in the one-to-one. And she pretty much told me she was disappointed in me that I couldn't make a decision. And I remember this clear as day. I pushed back from the table a little bit. I put my pen down. I said, okay, let's address the elephant in the room. And I hit it with data. I said, on my performance review, isn't 50% of my performance review risk management? Yes. Okay. You don't see the potential conflict here of me and my direct, right? I'm trying to mitigate. I don't want any problems. I don't want the department to have any problems. And I said, and isn't like 20% leading with integrity? Okay, I got to be
Yeah.
able to go home and look at myself in the mirror at night. And these are people's lives that are in the palm of my hands, right? I'm not trying to mess with that. And so I just hit it back with the data. And when I walked out of that room, I was like on cloud nine. I was like, yes, I finally get it. I finally
There you
get it, because
go.
you can't argue data, right? There were some other things said, which I'll leave off of the pod, right? But at the end of the day, it came down to where that gave me the confidence that, you know what, you can't, it doesn't matter where the other person is in the organization. You can have a very professional, direct conversation and advocate for your team and for yourself at the same time. So that's what I would say, is just get that boldness early so that you don't have any regrets in
Nice.
the future.
Have your boldness and educate yourself, right? That's that, go get the skills. And
Mm-hmm.
you can speak, you can talk the talk, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you are confident enough in what you have to say. Don't be too timid to say it,
Right.
and proceed with what you got going on. So
I
that's
100%
it.
agree. I 100% agree. Well, Andrea, it's been great talking to you today.
It's fun.
So Andrea and I, right, we this is what happens when you're in multiple things, right, going on. So I got to go do a workout class, and Andrea's got a engagement with her daughter. So we are going to cut right here, but I want to have you back. I actually want to have you back in about 9 months. I just want to see what's changed. Yeah, what's changed over the 9 months, right? Because I think it'd be a good way to just touch back, and maybe individuals then will have some additional questions for you as well. But just really quick, you guys, we said earlier, you can connect up with Andrea on LinkedIn as a way to keep this conversation going and having further conversations with Andrea. But Andrea, is there any place else that you would like individuals to connect it with you at this point?
This is the place where I am the most, and I am more likely to get to you the quickest. So this is the place to present any questions. I'd love to come back and have this discussion again after hopefully the fire hose turns down a little bit and I'm able to take more sensible gulps and share the experiences. And I really would love to see who has blossomed, who's been more bold and stepped out and confidently moved into a higher position that's been here today. So I'm excited about doing it again.
That would be amazing. So all of you all who are on the pod today, definitely come back and join us in about 9 months, because we would love to hear where you're at in the future. And of course, now you all should know how to connect with me by now. But if you're new and you don't know how to connect with me, here is all my social media details. Thank you to the BA Ninja Circle. Y'all know you're my ninjas. Thank you to the BA Ninja Circle for tuning in. I always appreciate the support. You can subscribe again to Dojo Talk on YouTube and Spotify. And if you've enjoyed the show, please help pass the pod on by leaving a review and a 5-star rating. You can also keep the BA Ninja training going by leaving your comments. I do respond to all comments on all platforms. It may not be the same exact day, but I will respond. So make sure to follow us. And until then, continue to be the BA Ninjas. I know that you are. Domo arigato, and we will talk soon.